Hey guys, welcome back to Laurence McKenna on the LFC channel, where we're previewing the Real Madrid game against Liverpool at Anfield Tuesday night, 8 p.m. And I'm gonna be high anyway. There are a lot of important things going on. They are in great form. They've just beaten Valencia 4-0. Obviously, in the Champions League, they're 3 from 3. They played Marseille. They played a team from Kazakhstan. And they've also played Juventus, who they beat 1-0. They've not exactly blown anyone away in the Champions League score-wise, but performance-wise, I think Real Madrid have really been finding their groove more recently. And even though beating Valencia doesn't seem like all that much, because Valencia are in the relegation zone in the La Liga, as I heard someone call it, we know that Real Madrid are a great team, and that will be a massive confidence builder before the game, as, by the way, was Aston Villa for us. And of course, momentum is a real thing, especially in the Champions League. Confidence is a real thing, especially in the Champions League, which is why I want to talk about this double-edged sword that we have coming up for us at Anfield. First of all, how are you guys feeling about it? Are you feeling confident? I've got to admit, it's probably one of the least confident feelings that I've had about this Liverpool team in years. Outside of, I didn't really, kind of, what I mean by that is, I always felt confident during the Klopp era, apart from when we were having our dips, but I knew that they were dips, and I could almost explain those in a Klopp-like way. This one, I think there are so many factors that we don't really know about, and there are so many things that we're trying to wrap our head around that we're not quite sure where we sit at the moment. We're not sure if this is a resurgence and beating Aston Villa was good. Obviously, it's good to win, but whether it was a good sign of the overall system, or whether it's the other way, and actually Villa were fairly poor against us. We did fine, but we benefited from an Emi Martinez misplaced pass, basically, and a Ryan Gravenberch drive, which ended in a goal, but ultimately the goalkeeper should have made a fairly conventional save of that. And if I was the goalkeeper, I'd be relatively disappointed by that. But we still controlled that game. I still just thought Villa were pretty poor. The system reverted back to what it was before, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure that if we play that way against Real Madrid, we're not going to have a great time. None of that, obviously, sounds positive. So let me take you through some of the positives. There are some really confident players. There are some real players in here who know how to thrive and feed off an ego. And there is a bit of a feeling of, we were attacked. We don't deserve this level of criticism. You heard Virgil van Dijk biting back against Wayne Rooney in the media. You heard him talking about some of the ridiculous takes. We know these Liverpool players, or at least he said, some of the Liverpool players hear these things or are impacted by those things. Other players are used to hearing it by now. And I think what I'm basically hearing by that is, this Liverpool side was licking their wounds a little bit over the last few weeks. We were annoyed by the results. The international break that came in the middle of those, the annoying way that we were kind of done over a couple of times by other teams late on, and really, we should have been much better at controlling the game. But that's what worries me. When we played Real Madrid at Anfield last season, I was there with Google Pics. It was lovely. But it didn't feel like a massive result. It felt like something which felt fairly inevitable to me. I know it felt there were big moments in there, and we all remember the Conor Bradley tackle and all those kind of things. But I think, for me, I remember watching and thinking, well, Real Madrid are still evolving. They're not a great team right now. In fact, they were still sort of learning the system. You could tell there was a bit of transitional kind of trepidation, and a few of their players weren't really firing on all cylinders at the time. Of course, we still had Trent at that point. We still looked like we were marching towards a title. We were in really rude health, and they were just not. And so the worry for me a little bit is that, last year maybe was without flipping those states. Now, Real Madrid looking very, very rude health, looking great in La Liga, looking pretty good in the Champions League, but also just looking confident overall, and a few of those players wanting to prove things. They were very pressing against Valencia. In fact, they pressed really well against Valencia. It was more counter-pressing than just direct pressing. Anytime they lost the ball, they'd try and win it back as soon as possible. And my concern is that the times that I've seen other teams go man for man, or I've seen other teams press in a very aggressive fashion against Liverpool this season, it has shaken them a little bit, or it's sort of been effective rather than shaking them. And that's my concern, I guess. I think Real Madrid have got a lot of individual quality which can pick apart a defence, and Aston Villa didn't really ever question us all that much. And the times when they did, they got a little bit of joy, but we kept them out wide mostly. Real Madrid are exceptional at working the ball into the middle. They're exceptional at just coming up with an incredible finish, and they're exceptional overall as a team right now. Mbappe, obviously, looking really confident. Their midfield has also got that great balance that we just feel like we lack a little bit at the moment. And my other big concern is, whilst we play kind of a reverted team from last season, how's that going to play going into Real Madrid, Man City? We have, 3 days in between the games? Well, technically Sunday, Monday, but, 3 days overall. And then we're going to go 5 days to the Sunday, and then we're into the international break. With that, how am I supposed to work out what my starting 11 is in this preview? Boohoo. If I think that actually the strongest starting 11 we can start right now is basically a variation of the midfield we played on against Aston Villa. And then really Cody Gakpo with Florian Wirtz. We can't do anything with this app right now. Frimpong's out injured. There are a few players in there where you sort of think, who are we going to start? Who are we going to play? And I'd love to know what your thoughts are. This is end up being a fairly negative preview. I guess you guys can sort of take that for what it is. And I guess how a lot of people are feeling about the team at the moment. I think there is still a little bit of trepidation. I think there is still a little bit of like, well, are we out the woods? Will we ever be out the woods? Will this appear to us at the end of the season as a blip, or will this appear to us at the end of the season as the beginning of something which was very negative? I hope it was something positive. I hope it was something that we can work our way out of. There are still a lot of people, and I think this is a big, media thing rather than reality. A lot of people still picking over the bones of what is going on for Liverpool. And I think they're much more critical than they would be if we were winning games, or even if they were just, sort of doing better than 4 games on the spin, not playing well and then winning against Villa. There is a lot more criticism. There is a lot more, I guess, analysis of what is going on at Liverpool because A, a lot of people are interested in it and they want to see how to pick Liverpool apart. But B, there is also an element of trying to whip up the idea of a crisis at Liverpool. And if the results even are going our way, but we aren't playing particularly well, you can still get that narrative of a crisis. I am still resistant of the narrative of a crisis. I think a lot of things that if there was a shift in team mentality or there was a shift in how we felt about manager, obviously, the COP was chanting Arne Slot and the team were responding to that to an extent. But I guess what I'm thinking is one game does not make a team and also one game does not make it a season, but it does feel like momentum can shift in this period. And I think we've got a fairly good idea after the Aston Villa game as to whether the players back Arne Slot or not. I think overall, if players don't back Arne Slot, they don't put in that performance. You don't see him hugging Mo Salah post-game. You don't see Virgil van Dijk coming out and talking or focusing less on a manager or, focusing more on the outside. I think Liverpool overall are bonded and, it'd be silly for them not to be behind the manager. But you know what I mean? Like there is a bit of a we're not in the dark, but we were a bit like, ooh, lots of people are saying weird things like, is Arne Slot really the guy? And I suppose there are still questions over his tactics and where he's going, but it didn't really feel very understanding or as if we were giving him the time or the space that he needed to be able to develop this team or even just to put that starting 11 together. People always talk about that Liverpool team that only started together once. And I think that's kind of similar to what we've got to get here, to an extent, because we've, put together such a Galactico. Also, I'm resistant of using the word Galactico. I think that's probably one of the stupidest things I've ever said. But because we are putting together this fantastic side, this really high-powered, almost overpowered in some areas team of, big egos, young guys, people who want to come into the club and make an impression, people who are worried about being injured or not being on enough or whatever it is. There is a bit of a sea change, we say at Liverpool. There is a little bit of a shift in tone overall at the club from more of the Jurgen Klopp identity towards this new era. And I'm not even sure it's necessarily been an Arne Slot identity that he's had in the past. So I guess what I'm approaching this as, and a lot of people are going to go, well, it's the new Galacticos versus the Spanish Galacticos. There's going to be all these different headlines. That's not Liverpool yet. I think if we played them next season and things were to hold this season and we were to get through and, essentially develop the side in the way that we want to, great. Then we can talk about Galactico versus Galactico or, whatever it is, even though we never speak about that with any other teams that have spent. We never speak about that in another way. It's because Liverpool are box office. It's because Liverpool carry that same gravitas as Real Madrid. And some other teams don't. It's just that simple. And I think that's probably why we've had so much focus and why it's felt so awful is because there is a bit of public humiliation. There is a little bit of gotcha that people want to dig into. But I think a lot of people forget we are not even a third of the way through the season. We're a quarter way, just over a quarter of the way through the season now. And That's a lot of football still to be played. That's a lot of time for teams to work us out and for us to work other teams out and even work ourselves out. And there are some teams who've already got the solve. There are some teams who've already got the answer. I think Real Madrid look like one of those teams who got the answer. But confidence plays a big part in resting the players, in giving them the space and the time and the headspace just to be able to work out the genius things that we want them to do and to work out how to play in this new system or maximize the system in transition or whatever it is from the old system to the new system. I don't think Real Madrid is the time to be taking big hits, big swings at a fence, so to speak, of Real Madrid. I think now is the time to be going in there and showing the side, look, there's still confidence, there is still technical ability, there is still application, there is still all the things that you would want and expect of an honest Liverpool side. And then there is a little bit of ingenuity. And these guys are incredible. I've got to admit, I'm anticipating, and I hate to say this, but it's one of the first times I'll have been watching a Champions League game for Liverpool anticipating to lose since the Brendan Rodgers era. Not necessarily because we're awful. I still don't think we're great. But I think more because I think Real Madrid are very, very good. And that stings. We know Trent is returning with them. I'll be interested to see if they play him. Valverde was out wide on the weekend and kind of cutting inside. And there are a lot of different positions which would protect Trent, so to speak. But I'd love to see Liverpool either be able, A, to greet Trent back in kind of a you'll never walk alone style way, and then also give him a little bit of that you shouldn't have left Anfield hostility. I think both are possible. And he's very different to Fernando Torres. He's very different to a couple of other people who've left and then come back. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Mbappe, again, he's probably got a score to settle or a point to prove. Jude Bellingham, he's probably got a score to settle or a point to prove. Those guys didn't like losing against us last year, especially in the fashion they did with the penalty and all those other things. Lots of turning points. Rub the Green didn't really go their way, and it did go our way on that night. So I think there's a lot to kind of compete with there. But I think if we're on the front foot, we're talking about Liverpool, it's Mamardashvili. It's Connor Bradley, because I thought he had a particularly good game against Real Madrid last year, and I do think he can, we've got that. We want to unlock Szoboszlai, basically. I would actually start with Van Dijk, Konate. I'm going to go Kerkez. I think we'll start Kerkez because Andy Robertson can't play 2 games in 3 days back to back. I think we'll bring on Andy Robertson later. And then in midfield, I think we'll go the same 3 that we started on the weekend with that rotational 10/8 in McAllister and Szoboszlai. And I think that's a pretty great starting 11 with Salah, Ekitike. Here's the interesting bit. I would put Florian Wirtz in there, and I would drift McAllister a little bit out to the left, and I would let Wirtz go up against Trent. Now, one-on-one, actually, do I want Cody Gakpo early on to sort of exhaust someone back there? Actually, I want Cody Gakpo, and then I'll bring on Wirtz later and put him out on the left. I think if he's going to fit into this structure, then he's going to start out there. Basically start the same starting 11 we started against Villa on the weekend. Weirdly, the whole Calvin Ramsey thing, I think, has sort of put a bit of that would be interesting, but I still want to start someone like Connor Bradley out there. Mamardashvili, obviously, in goal. I think, he never really had a great time against Real Madrid, but he was a very good goalkeeper in La Liga, and there's clearly a reason we bought him. I think he's got these stunning saves in him. I still feel more confident with Alisson at the back, as I would have felt more confident last year with Alisson at the back. And Kelleher, being again on the bench, but he was fantastic last year. And I think there is something here to be cooked up. There is something here to be grasped at. There is something here. I want to see a better performance than I do even the result. I just want to see Liverpool perform and put in a result which, that gives us some confidence going into City. Question that my friend texted me, he said, would you finish outside the Champions League spots but still go for a 7th Champions League and win it? It's your question to answer. See you in the comments below. Be another video tomorrow before the Real Madrid game, of course, but I appreciate you guys watching. And of course, at Anfield tomorrow night, it's going to be absolutely insane. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you guys in a little while. Much love.